This is the S Word with Noble Cummings. This is Mick O'Connor. Welcome to episode 5 of the S Word. This is actually a re-recorded introduction as we had some gremlins in the works at the beginning of the program this week. So I'm just going to kind of like doing a reenactment here by myself. We just went generally around what we did in the week previously. And then I got into the fact that I'd sat down last week with Johnny Ifergan, who's the co-founder with his brother Tom of the NightGlo Brewery and DayGlo Coffee house in Bushwick. I interviewed Johnny about the unique way in which he brews and markets NightGlo beer. Do you want to explain a little bit about the actual concept of NightGlo, DayGlo? Yeah, and that whole thing that you actually just told me in the in the brewery itself.
Super. So my brother Tom and I are both musicians. We toured a lot growing up in bands. We're both from Mexico City and grew up in the States. We fell in love with music. We toured together in bands, and then we kind of split off into other bands. And just through touring, we fell in love. Tom fell in love with coffee and specialty coffee. I fell in love with beer, craft beer, and that whole movement. And it wasn't like we planned that. It was just, it happened. He ended up in Los Angeles and wanted to start his own business. And it was definitely a crazy idea at the time, and very humble. Our cousin Philippe, who had lived in Los Angeles at the time, was very happy to support and invest and become a partner. And so DayGlo started and hatched in Los Angeles. In the meantime, I was in Chicago. I was, also still touring, trying to make ends meet while I was brewing at home. And then I was also trying to work at breweries and decided, okay, I want to do this more. Everybody seemed to like the beer we were making, and so I felt like maybe it was time to take the next step. And so I started working for breweries and started my own brewery with some friends I'd met over the years, and it just so happened in the pandemic as well, which was really unfortunate and for a lot of people, as we all know. And I think we all had different ideas in the pandemic of what we wanted out of the business we had created. DayGlo opened up next to us in Chicago, and I just became really enamored with DayGlo and the concept and what my brother was building, my cousin. And so once it was decided that I was going to leave the place that I was at, my brother asked if I wanted to start a beer brand and call it NightGlo as a way to kind of like parallel the synergy between coffee and beer and uppers and downers. Michael Kaiser and I believe his name was Ian from Intelligentsia at the time, were curating a festival called Uppers and Downers in Chicago. And I felt super enamored by the idea and the concept of bringing the coffee world and the beer world together and celebrating both crafts. And but it wasn't until, after a year of trying to do NightGlo in Chicago, and we decided, okay, we're doing well, we need our own brewery space. And Chicago is an amazing town for beer, incredibly congested and saturated with beer and breweries, but the people are amazing, and that's our home, But we decided, there wasn't really any opportunities there for us to build what we wanted, and we decided to look into New York, and that's where DayGlo wanted to open up another location anyways. And so we found this beautiful building, this space in Bushwick, in Brooklyn, that was on the precipice, as everybody said, oh, it's changing, it's becoming the next Williamsburg. That wasn't what appealed to us, to be honest with you. I think it really just, we love the culture, the diversity here. We love the people here, the energy here was really electrifying. And people seem to be very open to new ideas. And, two concepts of coffee and beer, and not just, hey, we're a coffee shop and we're a brewery, but no, like we are immersive. We make beers with coffee. We do crazy things that maybe you wouldn't expect from a normal coffee shop and a brewery. Bushwick seemed like the perfect breeding ground for that, and to really like see if this is a viable concept.
You spoke a little bit earlier about your concept for the marketing of your beers, which is more, I guess, note and taste related, right? About why you think Bushwick or this area would be more conducive to that than, let's say, Chicago?
It all came down to, my brother explained to me that in coffee, that was also a thing that changed over time when, I guess they call it third wave or whatever, specialty coffee became a thing that, people started to promote their products with tasting notes on their coffee bags. And that was also looked at as a very kind of like polarizing thing for people. Who are you to tell me what this is going to taste like? It's a very subjective thing. It's a very personal thing for some people. So, but it evolved and it became something that people learned to accept and appreciate when they were looking, especially in a world where we have so many options. Being able to distinguish something because of just a hint of what maybe this could taste like really seemed to help that industry. So when it came to beer, the same thing has been happening over the last 5-10 years, where we're seeing this saturation that has also given us reason to maybe try to use the same approach. And that's why we decided maybe we should approach beer as more about flavors and characteristics, flavor profiles, instead of styles, especially for people that are new to beer, that are just discovering beer, and younger people. In Bushwick especially, we do have a lot of young people, young professionals that are looking at they have so many options. Sake, seltzers, non-alcoholic, like everything is just, there's so much. Flavor seems to be the underlying thing that people are responding to, and that is what's drawing them to trying things. I think a big thing that we realized early on when we opened up this location was these coffee farmers, these roasters, have spent so much time creating these amazing products, and we're brewing them intentionally with such a big focus. We cannot just make beer with also New York products and just pour it like anybody else, because we're just doing a disservice now, and they're not equal then, and we needed to make sure our beer program and the way we pour beer and serve beer was living up to the way we brew coffee and pour and serve coffee. And so that was what drove us to the decision of really focusing not just on how we brew the beer, but also how we serve the beer.
What's a typical NightGlo client?
We've been really fortunate to have such an amazing, diverse, there's no boundary, there's no, I feel like it's really hard, and I get emotional about it because it's really hard to create like a space that people feel safe. Mm-hmm. And, my brother and I are first generation immigrants. Like we've always felt like, it's hard to you always want to fit along, you always want to be a part of the group. And so this space, it wasn't like we put signs up and say, hey, all are welcome or whatever, but like we just knew that we had to be friendly, approachable, and inviting, and create a space that people felt welcome. And naturally, over time, we noticed that a lot of our clientele are people in the neighborhood that are definitely from all walks of life. Maybe they're like, I'm not really a coffee person, or I'm not really a beer person. We have an amazing list of specialty teas, and we have mocktails for people that aren't drinking alcohol. And so it's really made everyone feel like, hey, this is a space we can go to. It's open every day, all day, and we can just have a nice, chill and relaxing evening or day and feel like we can be ourselves. It just kind of happens. It's an organic thing. We just really appreciate the community for giving us that gift, that we can be that space for them. Here you can be whoever you want to be.
What time of the day does it kind of switch from coffee shop beer?
We opened as the coffee shop, and once we got our farm brewery license, we were able to start serving other breweries beers while we were trying to finish our brewery. Bushwick has been incredibly difficult to figure out, and in some ways that's actually kind of been really exciting. We've had people come in at 10 a.m. to drink brown ale with coffee in it. We've had people come in at 10 p.m. to drink an espresso. There's people that come in and drink both. I've had someone come in and order a mocktail, and then they got a beer after that. And I think that's, again, speaking to the fact that we live in a time where people want to try new things and don't necessarily want to stick to one thing. What's also equally as exciting is we are a space for people that are like, no, I'm a coffee all in. I want to try all your coffee stuff. And then like last night we had someone come in like, I'm here for beer. Like, okay, cool, like we got it, let's go, let's talk. They're both kind of coexisting at the same time all day. But we definitely are more day drinking heavy, I'd say. And I think it's because of the space and the natural light that we have, and people love the idea of that and being able to work or be with friends and family and enjoy that. And then, the evenings have been more organic and have started to pick up. And, we definitely see a little bit more cocktails in the evenings, and we see, we still have some people trickling in with teas and beer, anything that's either no caffeine or it's alcohol. And then the occasional, hey, I'm about to go to work, I'm going to be at work till 4 a.m. Can I please have a cortado or a drip? So yeah, it's hard. And then we've tried to change the sort of the feeling, the mood as it, obviously as it becomes dark. The space definitely becomes dark and a little bit more intimate.
Okay, can you go into a little bit about sustainability aspects of your brewing process? I know that I think you source a lot of your hops, etc., from upstate.
Hops come from Chris Holden, who started the Hop Guild. He's also a hop farmer and grower as well. An amazing person that has kind of definitely saw the need for more growers in the state, formed a lot of partnerships and relationships with a lot of hop farmers in the state to help support them and utilize their products, so that it's almost like the Hop Guild to me is this is a great way to I can talk to Chris and Chris can talk to the other farmers, and it's kind of it makes it a lot easier. Chris is almost like the middleman.
It's like a two-way street kind of thing, is it?
Yeah,
You might ask for certain nuances in what you're getting from the Hop Guild, or
we're very small potatoes. We're fortunate that Chris has been so kind and generous in, when possible, obviously, because sometimes it's not possible, but even when we're buying on spot, just buying small quantities, we're not on contracts or anything. If they have a few different lots available on spot, they've been very kind and generous to gear us in the right direction of which lot we would want, depending on what flavors we're looking for. And so that's been really helpful. That's usually you can only do that if you are on a contract. It is really reassuring, and I think it's because he values that we are 100% all in to what, we believe in what they believe in. And so I think that's why maybe we are fortunate to have that ability. It's one of those things where I actually just got off the phone with him yesterday, that they have to offer every year that they harvest. And it's growing and it's growing. If somebody decides, hey, I want to buy the New York lots, even if they're from out of town, even though they're no, you should buy the stuff that isn't New York because I want to keep the New York stuff for the New York breweries. At the end of the day, they're still running a business, and so they that can happen. And so sometimes there is a little bit of I'm going to be running out soon. I have to make sure I have enough until October, So, but Chris is great because they're willing to work with us. As in well, how much do you need until October? Let's lock that in so that you have what you need. We'll work out a payment situation, but that way you're not having to go outside of New York ingredients. So yeah, Chris has been great on the hop front. Ted and Patty Holly from New York Craft Malt have been fantastic to work with. They've been around for a long time. And Andrea and Christian Stanley from Valley Malt. Honestly, when we were in Chicago and we started this, we were working exclusively with Sugar Creek Malt in Indiana. It was 2.5 hours away. It was the closest thing we could get that was local, quote unquote, that was incredibly consistent, really great quality. We got really close with the family. Caleb and Whitney are amazing. And they're kind of people, you go to their farm every time, and there's always something new. There's always something new to see. There's a new project. I'm building a bar out of my corn crib, or I'm starting a new automated malt house, or, all these things. And it's exciting to see. But I think I was on his farm one day, and they were showing us the rye fields. And he put out his hands while he was walking through the fields. And it's just that picture to me was that was when I was okay, I don't want to work. I mean, I have all the most respect for imported malt and those growers, Vireman, Simpsons. Those are generations of families that have worked so hard and sacrificed a lot to make such an amazing product. And I understand why a lot of American breweries want to work with those malt houses. But it's that moment on that farm that made me realize that there is, we have an opportunity and almost a responsibility to use what we have around us. And I wasn't thinking of it, honestly, as a sustainable thing. I was just more it's incredible. It's right here. There's a connection, a personal connection that I will never have unless I go to Germany and meet with the farmers there, which I don't have the means to do. And I think I started thinking about it more as like, our ancestors, whether they're in Europe, Africa, Asia, wherever they, Latin America, when they were making beer, when you ask them, well, how did you make your beers? What did you do? Like, oh, we got our ingredients from the local farmer. We got our hops from the yard nearby. We, even when I was making beers in Scandinavia, like they literally went to their neighbor's house to grab hops from the tree. There's a lot of, or the vine, sorry. This idea of just like terroir in other countries. And in America, it's never been about terroir with beer as much, or it doesn't get talked about as much until now recently. I want to do the same thing. I want to honor our land and what we have to work with and be a part of that. So.
And that's why I think you can speak so passionately about your beer, right? Because you see those ingredients come out,
Yep.
You know where it's come from.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you know the people.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate to meet some of the farmers. Even on the bags that we get, we know which farm it comes from. Andrea and Ted are always willing to like make introductions so that we can meet the farmers. If we're in that, hey, I'm traveling up north, I would love to meet with so-and-so. And, so that's been really nice to have that connection, even if it's not directly to the farmer, but it's still here. It's very close.
New York is a hell of a town, right? I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that frustrates you running a business in New York City?
It's a very loaded question. As someone who came from Chicago, we are not in the real estate business. Maybe we should have been. But I will say the only thing that has been difficult to navigate in New York is working with landlords, property owners. And that's not a knock on our landlord here or anything like that, because at the end of the day, they're in the real estate business. They're looking after their assets, and it's all an investment for them. Whether we stay, we leave, somebody else comes in, at the end of the day, all they care about is appreciation of their property values. And, that's that business. It's very cutthroat. I really wish there was more support, the tenant-landlord relationships. I feel like there's a reason why so many people have a hard time as small businesses staying long-term because, they struggle with that. There's a reason why there's been 5 different businesses in this building before we showed up that didn't survive. They're overpriced. And I think that's partially to do with brokers, dictating, or whoever's dictating the market and saying, no, Bushwick's worth this much money. It's like, that's almost like Manhattan price. And there's nowhere nearly as much traffic, nowhere nearly as much guaranteed income. So that's been the most frustrating thing, is like having to deal with that sort of push and pull and give of real estate brokers, landlords, that whole situation. And you could argue and say that that's the case anywhere you live, anywhere in this country. I will give credit to our landlord for being very supportive of our situation as far as we've had to change our business model. We came in, there was a giant 20-barrel system in here in the space, and that was what it was marketed as turnkey.
So, sorry, it was an existing brewery?
It was an existing brewery, yeah. And we had no idea. We had no idea about the brewery, no idea about the history and what happened. This system was kind of shoved into the back space, and a lot of things were not really done the way they should have been done, let's just say. But there was some sense of like understanding and empathy because, we've all been there. We've all been there when we start a business, and we're just trying to survive and trying to make it work. So it was no hard feelings towards anyone. It was just like, this is what we're given. And we took the space with the understanding that we were going to move the equipment to the side that we're in now, the warehouse, and use that as a production space to continue to make beer for New York and for Chicago. But it quickly became clear that it was incredibly expensive to do anything in the city. So we decided that was probably not going to work, and we had to change and shift our model to, let's sell this equipment, let's get something smaller, something more concise, fitting for what we were trying to accomplish here, something that was more appropriate, I guess. It was a very humbling decision because here we were coming to New York City. Hey, we're gonna take on this big space because we're gonna do production. We're gonna go to Chicago. We're gonna continue building that market, distribute and everything. Everything kind of just happened in a whirlwind, almost like a big storm. And it really made us just realize that, like, given everything going on in the beer market, given everything going on with rent and everything that was just crazy, that we were, maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe we weren't meant to do all this crazy stuff. And we were meant to maybe downsize to a smaller system and just focus on creating a space people can enjoy and being more on-premise heavy. Even though we still package our beer and we can do to go. That I think changed our focus and our sort of vision and mission for this company as a whole in the future. And it made us realize that in order to grow sustainably as a company, given what we're seeing with the brewing industry as a whole, what if we grow laterally instead of vertically? What if instead of trying to build a giant production facility in one location, what if we just grow laterally, where if we do want to open up in Los Angeles or somewhere else, that space is also a small on-premise focused brewery that can maybe do some self-distribution, but is still very a small space that uses the agricultural ingredients from that region and serves that community while still maintaining the brand ethos and all that. So
that was part one of the interview with Johnny Ifergan from the NightGlo Brewery. I want to thank him very much for taking so much time during the week. In part two, and actually part three as well, I'll actually go through the second part, obviously, of the interview, but also the kind of audio tour he gave me of the brewery, the different kind of setups there, the different type of setups he has for each type of brew, and obviously the coffee shop and all that, So, again, thanks to Johnny for taking time out this week. What do you think of that interview?
It was really impressive. I was hearing a lot of the same talk that was going on at the Rupert's Cup a couple of weeks back where I met him. And it was interesting, this idea of like, hey, we just want to do the right thing. And it's not like they're not particularly sustainability focused in a pedagogical manner. They're just really trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to listen to the people who are better at farming sustainably, the people who are better at providing these things, getting things local. And, we were off mic, but I kind of made the point that it was sort of like, when he was talking about getting stuff from Europe as opposed to not getting stuff locally. And it's like, well, in Europe, they pride themselves on getting things that are close, and they're doing that, the terroir of things. And us doing that here is great. It's a really big thing. So hats off to you, and I can't wait to go try NightGlo out.
So I actually did get to taste the beers there. So afterwards, he was very gracious.
Oh, wow.
And at very little prompting.
Yeah.
I jumped at the chance to sit at the bar.
All right.
And he gave me taste, I think it was like 3 different beers. And, his whole thing with his brother is like the brother does, his brother Tom does the coffee.
Okay.
Right in the mornings. And then he does the brew at night. And, they try to, I don't want to say crossbreed, but they try to influence a little bit the beer with the coffee. So Johnny had made, and I forget the name of it, but he'd made one beer, okay? And it was very nice kind of Pilsner-y type lager, And he said, try this second beer, right? And it was the same beer, but with coffee notes. And I thought, he told me up front, and I thought, I'm not big into that,
Yeah.
I don't want a big like pineapple in my beer, But I've got to say, there was just a kind of like note of coffee in the froth, because he uses the I think they're called Kevlar taps that kind of aerates, gives you more of a head than a regular American tap would.
Okay.
And in that head, as you tasted it, okay, there's just a hint of coffee.
Yeah.
And it wasn't off-putting.
Yeah.
I've got to say. So, kudos to him for bringing that in and giving that a go. Then I had a darker beer that had more coffee notes in it, and that wasn't my cup of tea.
Your cup of tea?
But I can see how people, younger than myself, maybe, would be into that, or people like you that, just drink anything.
I guess. Wow, thanks. Yeah. Well, I left my peppermint schnapps outside, but I forget what we had at the Rupert's Cup. I thought it was absolutely wonderful, and he immediately got, I believe, second place there on his first time there. Very good.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's an amazing place. I encourage everybody that's still here listening after all that, to go there and taste the coffee and the beer. Yes. So I think it's time for sustainability in the news. What do you think?
Oh, sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Sustainability in the news.
So to start off with, we have some great news coming in on the national front. The U.S. has banned the last type of asbestos still in use in American manufacturing. Known as white asbestos, the mineral is used in roofing materials, textiles, cement, as well as gaskets, clutches, brake pads, and other automotive parts. It's also a component in diaphragms used to make chlorine. Now, you may remember, if all two listeners may remember, that when we were first airing, one of the very first news articles I reported on was the national movement to push for the finalization of the ban on asbestos, put forward a lot by firefighters who were concerned about the overuse in their in some of their gear, and it turns out that this national program was all over Times Square, as well as across the country on billboards, and it worked. Congress actually did this. This is the first time since 1989 that the federal government has moved to significantly restrict the toxic industrial material, which has been linked to lung cancer and mesothelioma, a cancer that forms in the lining of some internal organs. Imports will be immediately banned, but not for other types of asbestos. So there is still more work to be done. But it's great news on this front because it's just a material we don't need to be using, and I'm glad to hear that groups from all across the aisle got together and backed this up.
Have you heard about this thing on Roosevelt Island? This project. The project's called the Manhattan Healing Forest, and it's going to cover 2,700 square foot and consists of 1,000 native plants, trees, and shrubs. It's one of these like mini forest things, I guess.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like these token type.
Oh, okay.
But I guess it's good, right?
That sounds pretty cool.
And they're going to utilize the Miyawaki method, known for its efficient and rapid growth of vegetation. What's all that about?
I know a little bit of Miyawaki method.
I thought you might.
Yeah. It involves planting 2 to 4 different types of indigenous trees within every square meter. The methodology was developed in the 70s. I think it's kind of an offshoot of the permaculture method. And the idea was that by recreating more of a natural habitat, you can get better, more sustainable forest growth. And this is opposed to doing something like the million trees method, where you just keep plunking trees all over and over and over again, and you're just basically making like corn stalks. This creates a much better barriers against pests and climate change, salinization, all different kinds of threats. So this is really cool.
So who's this Sugi, a foundation that is covering the cost of these endeavors? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about them. I'll have to look into them.
So this is all scheduled for planting in April by community volunteers. So I guess you could volunteer for that, could you? Who would you volunteer for that to? City?
Roosevelt Island, I think, is under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department. So you probably go to the Parks Department.
The whole
and find
thing?
it. Well, yeah.
Is it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we have a friend who I hope becomes a future interviewer, interviewee, who worked for the Parks Department on Roosevelt and then on Randall's Island for several years.
So, I used to play football on Randall's Island.
Oh, yeah? All right. So what else do we have? Let me see. This is kind of on a down note. There's a big surge in demand for electricity has shot up so much that, and mind you, it's stayed flat for about 2 decades, in large part because of our efficiencies in technology and light bulbs and computers and all different kinds of items.
Has this got to do with batteries and all that?
Yeah. Over the past year, electric utilities have nearly doubled their forecast for how much additional power they'll need by 2028. Peak demand is projected to grow by 38,000 megawatts nationwide over the next 5 years. And to let you know, 10,000 megawatts is the city of New York.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they're not helping, are they, New York? Because they've banned gas cookers now going in, right, into anything above 3 family.
Right. No, this is actually kind of a problem. And the increased appetite for more electricity is driven not only by electric cars, but also by battery and solar factories and other aspects of the clean energy transition. Also, things like now that we stream all the time after the pandemic, we're doing a lot of things online. Like right now, we're streaming this radio show. And a lot of data farms, server farms need this electricity.
Yeah, there's a data farm in Iceland that's blowing up right now over this.
Really? Maybe that's the sooty smell I was smelling.
That's where they put them, right, in cold places.
Yeah, they hopefully, if they're smart,
right? Because of the cooling.
But you still got to get the data here, which means you need another server farm to pick it up.
While we're on this subject, though, what about the heating in here?
It is
what
getting
about
warm.
Old buildings that You can only flick on the switch
Can
on
we
or
just
off.
stay on subject here, and then we can get off to
I felt like going on a bit
This
of
is
a rant.
another rant, a mixed rant. Let's do next week in the mixed rant, because it'll probably still be running.
I'm gonna do this rant
next Monday.
I'm gonna do this rant next
It
week.
could be 70 degrees outside, and it will
Right.
still be this hot in here. I
And
guarantee.
the rant is going to be, how come you're not? You go. It's freezing outside. Then you go somewhere hot. Then you go somewhere cold. Then you go somewhere hot.
Okay, can we say that for next week so I can finish this? I'm sure everyone's cracking up on the
Making
other
a
side.
mental note of that.
So cleaner alternatives for wind and solar aren't growing fast enough and are being bogged down by delayed permits. We just don't have a system yet in place for building these things, even though they can rapidly be built and put into place. Whereas even though it takes a whole lot longer to build a natural gas plant, which is what's mostly slated to fill in these energy gaps, they can actually be attached to the energy grid much quicker. And something that mostly, scaled sustainability energy projects can't get around is that they can't run 24/7.
I'll tell you what, they should tie your tongue to the energy.
Wow, thanks a lot. You're the one. You just broke you just broke the whole line talking about your rant about. I didn't even forgot what you ranted. Oh yeah, the hot air and the thing, and it's your hot air, man. So as the last one, this is another little Debbie Downer moment here. It's the mayor of Bummersville. Here I am.
Can't you do something like cheery?
I did cheery. I started out with cheery. The asbestos thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Anyways, next week.
Asbestos, that cuddly subject.
Yes. All right. So next week is your good last chance to see the cherry blossoms for the year go down. It's a huge spectacle. The mayor of Tokyo gave it as a gift to Washington, D.C. in 1912. It's one of the largest tracts of cherry blossoms in the world, if not the largest. And unfortunately, because of sea level rise, the National Park Service that manages them all is going to be working on the seawall along the edge of the Jefferson Memorial. And they will be chopping down 140 of these trees in order to do it, which sucks. And it costs $113 million over 3 years to create new structure that can last 100 years against rising sea levels and accelerating climate change. But that's a lot of money. And that's just to fix this little area. And think, we could just prevent it. We could just do other things and work it out. So that's the news today. And let's move on, Nick.
You ready with the weather?
I am ready with the
I'm
weather.
going to play the ident, then you do the weather, okay?
All right, we're doing
Not the other way around.
Got
Ready?
It's time for the weather.
All right, here we are, Washington, D.C., in honor of the cherry blossoms, which are a beautiful sight to see. And Brooklyn very much has their own. But right now we've been talking about D.C., so here we go. The high on Saturday will be 60 degrees with a low at 43. Precipitation, there will be a little bit of rain tapering off at 6 a.m., equaling about 0.65 inches. And wind is always important when you're looking at cherry blossoms. 7 to 13 miles up to 30 miles an hour gusts coming at you from the southwest.
So any reason that you did the weather in Washington?
Yes, because of the cherry blossoms, like I said.
Oh, I missed that.
I just said that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You say a lot of things,
I know. Clearly you don't pay attention to most of those. We're gonna be famous.
Is it the snoring? No.
It's gonna feel like it's 58, which I don't know. Is there any difference between the feeling of 58 and 60?
Not really.
Okay, and the humidity will be 74%, which, of course, because DC actually sits in the middle of a fucking swamp.
Right.
That Donald Trump wants to drain.
What's the history of DC? Why is it District of Columbia, not a state?
Why is it a district?
I know they tried to make it a state, but why is it? Yeah, I know it's a seat of government.
The idea was, that was
but
it.
Why was it cut off? Cordoned off that way?
Is this a question you know the answer to, or are you just trying to?
No,
I think they wanted to get something as far away as they could from anything else. I think it was the first seat of government that was actually pushed as far away as possible from any seat of trade, so that it couldn't be influenced by. In theory, the idea was that it wouldn't be influenced by trade politics. It wouldn't be New York, it wouldn't be Philadelphia, it wouldn't be these other places. And
they got that wrong.
Well, eventually, yeah. I mean, humans developed, and just I don't mean that develop. I mean, they developed the area. I mean, it took days to bring in firewood, and evidently the president's salary could barely keep the place warm.
Yeah. Did you watch any good movies this week?
I did.
What do you see?
I saw Naiad.
Naiad?
Yeah. So that's about the...
Sounds like a battery.
This is a lady. It was nominated for some Oscars. The lady who swam from Cuba to Florida.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
She's about your age. Old as dirt.
Oh, God bless her then.
And she did it. I was crying. She saw the top. She was hallucinating. She saw the... She tried 5 times.
Right.
5 times in her 60s, and this Australian lady gets out there and tries to. I'm going to do this.
She's probably swimming, trying to get away from this show.
It probably. She knows we're good for it. We should just play it on a loudspeaker.
So listen, what did we learn this week?
What did we learn this week? We learned that we learned how to fix radio tech here. That was pretty fun.
Right.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what lessons can we? Oh, we can't draw any lessons from that, can you?
No, but you know what? That interview was actually really great. It's nice, again, to see people who are just going out and rolling up their sleeves and doing great stuff. And, at least, some of the news articles that I read, which are a little down, they should just be calls to action.
So what I learned was that the making of beer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a work of art and a labour of love.
Yeah.
And that Johnny from NightGlo is a really nice guy. That's a stand-up guy.
That's great.
And I think we're supposed to actually go and have a pint with him, actually, at Hartley's at some point.
Okay.
Which I really look forward to. What else? Did you learn anything else this week?
I learned that, again, I learned about Colombia. And
going to go off another tangent, aren't you? Colombia, the country?
My students, yeah. I mean, my students did their midterms, and my students are all really good. And I pushed them a little bit. I try to make them fall in love with the idea of sustainability and systems thinking, and then I pushed them to do good presentations, and they all showed up. They did great presentations, and thank you very much to all one of you who are listening.
Time for a pint.
Let's go.
All right. See you next week. We're going to do part 2 of the NightGlo interview. We're going to waffle on relentlessly about
It's a wrap.
a load of different crap, basically.
And remember to follow us on Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram at
That's word 24
correct
at Instagram. At Instagram.
That's dash word 24.
Yeah. Is it underscore word 24?
Something like that, yeah.
Anyways,
And,
It's a wrap.
yeah. Thanks for listening. If you're listening.
Thanks.
And if you're not listening,
It's a wrap.
well, you're not listening. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.